All right, well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I'd like to show you some of the schedule. This is what's coming down the pike if you're interested in creation. And I'll put this up at the very end too if you don't get there. Rob Carter from CMI is going to be up in Uppsala. I can't believe it. You know, he's all the way from Georgia and got a great ministry from Creation Ministries International. And then I'll be in Rockford the next day. And then the big one is Mike Snavely a week from Tuesday on the 20th. Mike Snavely is going to be at the University of Northwestern, where he's going to be talking about evidence for the flood. He does a great job with that, and I'm so excited to hear that one. I really am. We should be carpooling down there. I'm celebrating it like the Christmas. And then next month, I'm going to be at the vocational school on Wednesday, the 13th, and then we're going to be here again at the library on the 14th. But this is the one I'm really excited about. There's a creation conference at Living Water Bible Camp down by Westby, Wisconsin. And it's just across the border from Rochester, I think. And it's got Dr. Randy Galuza. He's the president of ICR. And has anybody ever been to Living Water Bible Camp? Anybody ever? I mean, it's one of the neatest places on earth. It's got the Western theme, and you can get up, you can hike around in the rolling hills. They got a trout stream there that they raise trout, and it's just a really, really fun place. And it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so it's 3 days and 2 nights, and it's $95. Plus, you get to talk to Randy Galuza, and he's the nicest. Oh, I have so much respect for him, because he actually invited people to come in and share the hydroplate theory with the ICR people. He wanted them to know what other people were saying, and that might not have been easy for him, but he did it. And so I think we should go down there and thank him for doing that. And just that he can say such powerful things very gently. I don't know how he does it, but he is my favorite speaker. If it would have been any other speaker, I would have thought about going, but it's Randy Galuza, so I'm going. He's within a day's drive, so it's well worth it, and I encourage it. This should be on everybody's bucket list. Go see Creation Bible Camp. Plus, they have a really neat creation museum. To get you up to speed with what's been happening in the creation battle for me, since we spoke last, we had a table at St. Cloud State where we were promoting creation and Grace Campus Fellowship, and there was about 8 people that signed up to get our emails. And then January and February was just beautiful, right? So I went to St. Cloud State, and that black thing on the bottom there, that's a speaker. And I played Real Science radio shows or creation material so that they can get another perspective. And then I had this sign. Again, this is January and February. There's no snow at all. And a professor walks by and he sees the sign on my bike which said, did hydrogen and helium really turn into people? And he stopped and he said, no, hydrogen and helium did not turn into people. And I said, well, what did the Big Bang make? And he didn't answer, so I said, hydrogen, helium, and a little bit of lithium. And he goes, yeah, and those turned into chemicals. We're all stardust. And I said, well, how did life begin? And they can't answer that. You know, they can't answer that at all. I mean, we don't have to back down to any evolutionist. All we have to do is ask them where the matter came from and how did life begin, and it puts them in a stew pot. They can't answer them. They have just as much faith, if not more faith, than we have. And then I was on Tuesday, I had a kiosk at the community college here. And I was promoting the talk. I spoke there yesterday, so there's doors are opening. And I met somebody there who might want to start a club there. So instead of being out in the side building, we might be able to be in the big building. And we met last week. We gave you the talk, Creation Basics. And this is on my YouTube channel. It's Solidify Your Faith on YouTube. And for a quick review of what we covered last week, we looked at 2 histories. One history has a creator that made everything. The other history has blind chance that made everything. And we looked at those in the 2 frameworks, and the creationists are making better predictions than the blind chancers, for lack of better terms. We looked at 2 definitions. And this happened when I was talking to the atheist at the vocational school. He said, well, I believe in science. And whenever anybody says that, ask them, what do you mean by science? And basically, it's the scientific method. Something that's observable and testable and repeatable and falsifiable. But that's not evolution. Evolution's none of those things. So I help them realize that that's not science. If you believe in science, we should be able to observe it and test it. And what you're talking about with the Big Bang and evolution are not science. And so they both have belief systems. And then we looked at the laws of physics. And if you allow for a supernatural creator to make a natural creation, everything fits. You don't break any laws of physics. But if you reject God and you depend on blind chance for everything, you break the first and second law of thermodynamics, Boyle's law, the aggregation problem, and also the law of biogenesis. And so you have a miracle at every one of those phases. They break laws of physics. And we looked at logical fallacies. You know, even if you start making scientific points, they're going to start saying, well, everybody believes in evolution. That's the majority. You know, appeal to a majority, which isn't true. 40% of Americans believe in God created man less than 10,000 years ago in his present form, according to the Gallup poll. And so the majority of Americans are creationists. And then 33% believe that God made man with evolution, and so that's 73% of Americans believe in God, and only 22% of Americans are blind chancers. Okay, so now let's begin. Okay, we got, this is titled Good Fishing Holes for Creation. Do we have any fishermen out there? Anybody who's just been fishing? You ever been in a spot where they just pulled them in? You couldn't keep a clean hook. They just kept jumping into your boat almost. Anybody ever done that? Well, yeah, and it's great to be at that point. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to show you where to get creation information. You know, it's that saying, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach him to fish, he can eat for a lifetime. And so that's what I want to do here tonight. I want to teach you where the really good fishing holes are for creation so you can get equipped without me. And these are some of my favorite websites. rsr.org, that's Real Science Radio. I'll put this up at the end too. Creation.com, ICR, Reasons for Hope, r4h.org, and we'll get through all of these. But just to give you, Real Science Radio, that's my very favorite. You know, I've been called a lot of things in my lifetime and known as a lot of things, and the ones I can repeat, I was introduced as the Johnny Appleseed of creation, or Kent Hovind's twin, or the dinosaur guy, or at VBS, you're the funny guy, and at St. Cloud State, the Jesus guy, you're the nice preacher, and then COVID hit, so I went to Lake George, and a homeless person said, you're a God's social worker. You know, but the thing that really, really hits me is when somebody called me the Bob Enyart of St. Cloud. And you're thinking, Bob, who? Well, Bob Enyart. He was on the air. He had a TV show, Bob Enyart Live, and then he's been on the radio with Real Science Radio for 25, 30 years. And he's very bold. You know, I can do what I do because I see him as an example of boldness. And I think we need to be bold in these times. And you go into RSR, Real Science Radio, and it's also a place they do good research. You go into RSR and search soft tissue, and you're going to get this page. And they made predictions that were accurate. They predicted soft tissue will be found not only in rare circumstances, but rather easily, i.e. whenever looked for, and that's what happened. They took 8 fossils from, I think, the British Museum of Natural History. They're like 100 years old. And they looked for soft tissue, and they found it in 6 of the 8. And what else did they predict? Original dinosaur and other biological tissue will be found largely independent of the claimed age of the fossil. So basically, it doesn't matter where you take it in the geologic column, you're going to find soft tissue, undecayed tissue, and that's been confirmed. Another thing, you can click that thing on the top and go to a list of original biomaterial found fossils, and you're going to get linked to here. These are the scientific papers that talk about undecayed tissue in fossils, and there's a lot of them. The first one was back in 1954, and there's secularists that say this is the best category. It's the most comprehensive list of dinosaur soft tissue on the internet. So he does very good work, and he's very entertaining on how he explains it. But if you know some of this information, you could have a class like this. This is from Genesis Apologetics.
Many flood myths come out of the ancient Near East, and the Bible's account is just one of them.
Well, then how do you explain 14 states in America filled with dead dinosaurs and mixtures of marine life and other animals?
What?
There's an area that's about 1,800 miles long and about 1,000 miles wide, and it's filled in with mud, sand, and ash, which is exactly what you'd expect to find in the case of a worldwide flood.
Those creatures were buried millions of years ago, and their hard as rock fossils prove it.
Hard as rock fossils, right. But there are 120 scientific publications that reveal 16 different types of soft tissue found in ancient bones at every level of the geologic column. Some of these soft tissues, like collagen, only have a shelf life of just thousands of years. So how'd that last for 65 million?
Can you guys hear that okay in the back? Does that sound? Okay, good. Yeah, and there's a whole series on those classroom things. We'll get to that later. But speaking of dinosaur tissue, they did find dinosaur blood back in 2006. Mary Schweitzer found it, and she showed it to her boss, Jack Horner, and her boss said, can you prove they're not red blood cells? And he doesn't want to find something that can't be millions of years and something that has to be millions of years. And so, and then Bob Enyart, he called up Jack, that's her boss, and he held his feet to the fire. And you can see this. You go into rsr.org and /Horner, Jack Horner. This will pop up in about 18 minutes into the program. You're going to hear about, Bob Enyart, he said, hey, I'll give you $20,000 if you carbon date that bone. And Jack won't do it. So $20,000, that's what it ended up as. But on this radio conversation, a real-life radio conversation, it's $8,000. But listen to Jack squirm. This is a real-life call.
Hello.
Hello, could I speak to Jack Horner?
Yeah, who's calling?
This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver, Colorado. That's Bob Enyart.
Yeah, let me transfer you over to his office. I think he should be in there right now.
Hello?
Hello, Jack. This is Bob Enyart with KLTT Radio in Denver.
Uh-huh.
How are you doing?
Good.
Jack, I sent a letter to Bob Harmon a few weeks back offering the museum a grant of $8,000 to do a carbon-14 date test of that soft tissue T-Rex you guys dug up. And he said he would forward that to you. And I'm wondering if you saw that or considered it.
Well, carbon-14 doesn't work on something that old.
I understand that, and normally we wouldn't expect to get soft tissue out of a T-Rex skeleton either, but sometimes science proceeds by crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and you guys might have other things you'd like to carbon-14 at the same time. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to raise a little more money, so that's up to $10,000 now, that we'd be honored to give you guys if you would consider doing that test.
Well, we can't do that test.
You can't do that.
No.
Do you mean the museum doesn't have the laboratory?
We certainly don't.
Okay, well, we're happy to pay the expense of having a lab do the test in addition to the $10,000 to the museum.
Do you know how carbon-14 works?
Yeah, I'm familiar, and I realize it's useless for anything over maybe 50,000 years or so.
Yeah, and I'll let you guys listen to that on your own, but he just keeps squirming. He really doesn't want to do it because if he finds soft tissue, blood cells, can't be millions of years old, it's going to be really a bad look. But so at the very end he said, that's not going to help. And my question is, help what, Jack? Science, where you go wherever the evidence leads you? Or evolution, where you Mary, do you want to grab some chairs for him? Or John, do you want to grab some chairs for these people? Yeah, and you guys can get comfortable. And Steve, if you want to, too, then you don't have to turn your neck. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming. And so, but this is another one of my favorite sites is creation.com, where these people, scientists, actually did carbon date the dinosaur bones, and they came up with dates of 22,000 to 39,000. That's not millions of years. Oh, and I got a question real quick. Pop, this has to do with, we're going to get back to Real Science Radio. If you had to bet your paycheck on where did life begin, who would bet it on water? Who would bet it on land? If you don't bet it, I'm just going to take it. You got a 50-50 chance. Who thinks life started in water? Last time. Okay, we got a few. Who thinks it started on land? Okay, it's pretty even. More for the water. Last chance. Again, water? Land. Okay, all right. Well, I always thought it started in water, but then, thanks to Bob Enyart, NASA admits water is a problem for the origin of life. You ever heard that? Water's a problem for the origin of life. They're always excited when they find water. They think, well, maybe life started there. It's like, no, it can't start in water. And how do we know that? You go into rsr.org and search NASA water, and you'll find this on that page. See, Bob was part of this scientific community for years, hoping a situation like this would come up where they would take questions from the people that were part of the club. And so he asked this question. This is a real prestigious webinar over in Germany, and they picked Bob's question, and this is Bob's question.
This is for Dr. Wojtek, for Mary. It is from Bob, an independent science reporter, and the question is, rather than an asset, isn't water the enemy of prebiotic molecules? It's the universal solvent, and outside of a living organism, water dissolves life's building blocks like amino acids, sugars like RNA and DNA, various kinds of carbohydrates and other polymers. Shouldn't this chemical challenge be more openly acknowledged in astrobiology? I guess this assumes it's not acknowledged, but what do you say?
I think it's acknowledged.
And she starts squirming too. She says it's acknowledged, but Bob's been reading those science journals for decades, and he's never read anywhere where they acknowledge that water is a problem for the origin of life. But to this moderator's credit, he brings her back on task.
Sorry, I guess I didn't get
Well, I think the question is, it posits that water is a challenge for prebiotic evolution, that because it attacks the various molecules involved.
So, in some of the prebiotic, this is something that people think about. Hydration and dehydration reactions are really important in prebiotic chemistry. And so postulating that life could evolve when there is no opportunity for an environmental separation to allow dehydration reactions actually is a problem, and people do address that. And whether it's, you need a continent, which some people, life couldn't evolve until we had land so we could get away from the water, or there's other ways to separate it.
So it is a problem, and thanks to Bob who got that exposed. And another good website, again, is ICR.org. That's where Randy Galuza, and they're doing really good work with engineered adaptability. And we've done a talk in the past about the incredible design where things adapt very rapidly, and they call it continuous environmental tracking. But that's not what well, you can read about that if you want, but if you like watching videos, you can go to ICR.org and then hit the media button and then go down to That's a Fact, and then you get in about a minute, you're going to see a concept explained, and you're going to, I'll just let this do the talking.
Each year, it's fun to celebrate birthdays, and to be certain of our age, we can always check our birth certificate. But can any reliable methods determine the age of an object without a historical record? Radiocarbon dating measures the ratio of radioactive carbon-14 to stable carbon-12 in an organic artifact like wood or bone. The method assumes how much carbon-14 was present when the tree or animal died and how fast carbon-14 decays in order to calculate how old something is. Because carbon-14 completely decays in thousands of years, it should only be useful to date objects no more than tens of thousands of years old. However, using this method, scientists determined that samples from U.S. coal beds conventionally dated at 40 to 329 million years had carbon ages of 48,000 to 50,000 years. Diamonds are said to be billions of years old, but they still have carbon-14 in them, and returned ages of about 55,000 carbon years. And supposedly millions of years old dinosaur bones and other fossils show dates in the tens of thousands of carbon years. Radioisotope and radiocarbon ages can clearly contradict one another, so how can we know which method to trust? Measuring isotopes is very accurate, but the assumptions needed to convert those measurements into ages can't be verified. After all, how can anyone today verify how much of each isotope was in a rock or fossil when it formed long ago, or that no isotopes entered or left? Carbon-14 and radioisotope dates rarely match an object's real calendar age. But because the Bible is like a birth certificate for the world, resolving Earth's age is a piece of cake.
So there you go, in about a minute you got up to speed on carbon dating, and they must have nearly 100 of those. And I'm going to grab this one because it seems to be in the headlines, and if we have the wrong perspective of the past, we're going to make a big mistake in the future. And so let's just listen to this.
Climate change heats up the headlines, but is the Earth really getting warmer? Well, sort of. A warming trend existed for much of the 20th century, likely the last 30 to 50 years. But this warming trend leveled off in 1998. Some scientists and many activists claim that humans produce carbon dioxide, which causes global warming. They often point to the famous hockey stick diagram used in the 90s to supposedly prove their point. But research shows that the rise in CO2 actually happened after the Earth's temperature started rising. That means CO2, man-made or otherwise, did not cause the warming after all. And two significant changes in climate occurred within the last 1,000 years: the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age. Both changes happened before human industry could have influenced climate. So it's much more likely that climate change occurs naturally. For example, climate physics link fluctuating solar outputs to Earth's temperature. Should responsible citizens blame themselves for global climate change? Science has not yet ruled out human activity as playing a small role, but factors far beyond man drive most or all climate change. But it does matter that we take care of Earth, not because our failures could completely wreck the environment, but because God placed us here to take care of His creation and to know and enjoy Him through the things that have been made. Romans 1:20.
At the community college, I was talking to two girls, and they brought up climate change. And I was able to use some of this information with them. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the sun, or how about volcanoes in the Pacific? That's going to warm things up too. And then this should be required reading for everybody. This website, it's inconvenientfacts.xyz. Inconvenientfacts.xyz. This is by Gregory Wrightstone. And you read the book and you realize, hey, carbon dioxide is plant food. If we had more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we'd have more food and less droughts. And if you want to hear him being interviewed, guess what? Bob Enyart on Real Science Radio, he interviewed him. And just search, go in there and search Inconvenient. And it's titled Al Gore's Inconvenient Nemesis, Gregory Wrightstone. Because Gregory says for us to freak out over carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is like somebody freaking out over their gas tank overflowing when it's an eighth full. We've had 8 times more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in the past. And then this one too, this is on YouTube. It's Creation Minute, or you can find it on YouTube with Creation Today Ministries, which is really good. And this is in 1 minute. This is what Eric does. Eric Hoban.
Welcome to Creation Minute. I'm Eric Hoban. How old is the Earth? Evolutionists claim it's 4.6 billion years old. But what does the evidence say? Let's take a look. There are so many evidences of a young Earth. The Methuselah Tree, the Great Barrier Reef, erosion rates. Continents are eroding at a rate that would level them in just 25 million years. We've got comets in our solar system, but they only last 100,000 years. Why do we still have comets? Sahara Desert is growing, oil is still under pressure. Earth's magnetic field is actually getting weaker, putting a maximum age of 25,000 years on it. Earth's rotation is slowing down, the moon is receding, the human population is at 6.5 billion. Trace that backwards, it all started 4,400 years ago, right when the Bible says the flood occurred. Why? Because the Earth is young, not old. To learn more about creation, visit us at creationminute.com.
And he's got creationtoday.org, and he interviews somebody every Wednesday at noon. And so you can go in and listen to those interviews. Another good site is r4h.com. It stands for Reasons for Hope.com, and they go into there and look under the debunked button, or just type in getdebunked.org. And I love how these guys explain things. This has to do with fossils.
We've unearthed millions of fossils around the world, so with all this evidence, so to speak, it's clear that the fossil record proves evolution, right? Well, actually, no. Didn't when Darwin was alive, and hasn't since he's been gone. In fact, Chucky D himself knew this when he wrote the following: Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain, and this, perhaps, is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. The explanation lies, as I believe, in the extreme imperfection of the geological record. Okay, but surely after all the time since Darwin, digging and discovering fossil after fossil, we have a more perfect geological record that supports evolution, right? Not even close, bud. Listen to how 2 renowned evolutionary biologists summarize the truth. Instead of finding the slow, smooth, and progressive changes, they saw in the fossil record rapid bursts of change, new species appearing seemingly out of nowhere and then remaining unchanged for millions of years, patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation. The fossil record doesn't show gradual change, and every paleontologist has known that ever since Cuvier, or however you pronounce that. Okay, I could go on, but there's always going to be opposing views because on both sides of the debate, the same evidence is interpreted through different worldviews. You got to remember that, people. Facts don't say anything. People say things based on their interpretation of facts influenced by their worldview. But that's a whole other subject, and I don't want to get into it right now. Instead, hey, let's have a little fun and take a look at some popular secular articles and charts on the fossil record and see if we can learn to separate facts from interpretation of facts by asking a few simple questions. Question 1. Did the artiste take any artistic license with what I'm looking at here? Check this out because this happens all the time. Look, isn't that sweet? So cute and fluffy. Okay, why do you think the artist made these creatures appear more human-like by throwing in an affectionate smile and depicting them hanging out like a human family going to a picnic or something? Why did he draw them walking upright? Why make the shapes and colors of their eyes more human than ape? Is any of it based on actual fossil evidence? Of course not. But if you want the story of evolution to appear more convincing, you just might fill in missing gaps with your presuppositional imagination. Just saying. Question 2. Is the attention-grabbing headline or title supported by actual facts? For instance, take a look at this popular book called Why Evolution is True. We don't even have to go any further than the jacket on this one, because on it you got a dino evolving into a bird in 3 simple steps. There you go. But then on the inside, this is written, and I kid you not. The jacket depicts a chronological sequence of fossils showing the evolution of birds. We do not know whether the actual line of descent included, now wait for it, the first 3. Say what now? Doesn't that mean these 3 shouldn't be on the cover then? Which means all you got is a modern bird, right? No evolution, just a bird. Talk about worldview filling in gaps. On to question 3. What do the graphics on evolutionary charts indicate? I mean, they sure do look convincing. For instance, on this one from the dinosaur book, you got solid red columns and white columns showing gradual progression over time. But let's read the almost imperceptible 2-point font over here. It reads, tinted areas indicate solid fossil evidence, which means the white areas represent no solid fossil evidence, right? Okay, then take them away. Uh-oh, looks like patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation, I'd say, right from their own charts. And the same thing goes for the dotted lines on this one. Look at all of them. Just so we're clear, dotted lines indicate zero evidence. Remove them and what do you get? No transitional forms or evidence of gradual progression. A bat is a bat, a kangaroo is a kangaroo, and a horse is a horse. Of course, unless, of course, the horse is Mr. Ed. Look, people, all I'm saying here is if you got facts, put them in there. If you don't, leave them out. But don't draw downright dubious, daft, dare I declare, dunderheaded dotted lines of deliberate deception dogmatically and dastardly doodle to disguise definitive data. No. Just admit what you actually see. Overwhelming evidence of living things, according to their kinds, suddenly appearing, which, as a reminder, is exactly what the Bible teaches. Now, I don't even have time to get into TV, movies, and documentaries. All I ask is that you use the same line of questioning when you watch them. And in summary, we agree with Mr. D. Geology assuredly does not reveal any such finely graduated organic chain. Not then, not now, not ever. And that means the whole idea that the fossil record proves evolution has been debunked. Adios.
Boom. So you learn a lot in just a few minutes with these guys. And they started at Answers in Genesis. And some of their older ones are on answersingenesis.org. And then search Check This Out. And they've got a really good one on radiometric dating. I wanted to show you, and I emailed them, asked them if they could, and I didn't hear back from them. But everything else I'm showing you, they said, go for it, show it. And then they have a really good one on fossils and the flood. Highly recommend those. And they've on this debunked series, the very first one is There's No Evidence for God. It's excellent. I show that. I did a talk similar to this called Creation Night at the Movies. And I showed that video and that one. I'm trying to show different things. And so let's take a look at Lucy, because I was talking to an atheist at St. Cloud State, and I asked him, what's your best evidence for evolution? And he said the human fossils. So let's take a look at what they did with Lucy, the human fossil.
When it comes to so-called missing links between apes and humans, there's one that stands head and hairy shoulders above the rest. And I mean that figuratively because it was speculated to only be a little over 3 feet tall when alive. And I'm referring to none other than Australopithecus afarensis, my friend and yours, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Well, that's where the name came from. But it's just plain Lucy to you and me, and it's got some splaining to do because it ain't all it's cracked up to be. And I mean that literally. First of all, this highfalutin technical name simply means southern ape from the Afar region, which is about the only thing they say that's accurate when it comes to this supposed hirsute hominid, as all kinds of creative and fanciful things happen along the way to make Lucy into the ultimate missing link. But before I go there, let's just take a quick look at how Lucy is often depicted. Here you go, one right from a museum right there, another right from a textbook. Wow, look at her smiling and walking just like you and me. Now, did someone snap a photo of Lucy and the gang back then? I mean, is this how they found Lucy, walking around, waving at him with a cute little smirk? Of course not. So then how did this artist come up with this rendering? Well, who knows exactly, but let me tell you how it all started. Way back in 1974, paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson and his team discovered Lucy in the Afar region of Ethiopia. Or, more accurately, I should say, they discovered less than 30% of Lucy's fossilized bones. That's right, 70% of Lucy gone, not found. Well, wait a second then. What specific bones were found that convinced some scientists that Lucy walked upright? It must be at least the feet and the hips, right? Indeed, my friends, you're so right. You're so smart. So let's take a look at the feet and the hips. Now, the main evidence supporting the belief that this southern ape walked upright is that they found, now get this, human footprints in Tanzania, Africa in 1978. Now, you heard that right. 4 years after, and hundreds of miles away from where Lucy was found, they found human footprints, which of course means they must have been Lucy's. Huh? Not really convincing, especially when you consider the bones of Lucy that they did find did not include foot bones. What? Yeah, no foot bones, as in zero, zilch, nada, none, zippo. So if you don't have Lucy's foot bones, how do you know the human footprints hundreds of miles away were Lucy's? Well, maybe it's because they found other foot fossils they claim to be from Lucy's relatives. Only problem there is the toes were more curved than a chimpanzee's. That means the actual fossil evidence shows Lucy's family could not have made the human footprints. I don't know. Call us science deniers if that makes you feel better. But if the shoe fits, I mean, if the glove doesn't fit, you must. Nope. I mean, if the bones don't fit, well, whatever. Anyway, what about the hip? That's really going to prove Lucy walked upright like our rendering depicts, right? Well, you're going to love this part of the story, but before I go there, I got to throw two more facts at you for color and clarity. Fact one, after 40 years of research, Swiss scientists discovered something very surprising about Lucy. She ain't a she. He's a he. Or like they might say in California, Lucy's a dude, bro. So, question. How in the world did the earlier, nearly infallible scientists who were proclaiming Lucy as the unmistakable, irrefutable missing link miss this? I mean, this was pre-2020, and everybody knew the difference between men and women back then. Oops, probably shouldn't have said that. Fact dose. After making this discovery, scientists suggested a new name for Lucy. They suggested Lucifer. I am not kidding. And quite honestly, it's fitting because this set of bones has been used to lie to more people than just about any other in recent decades. Now, back to the great story that I call the hip bone manipulator. DJ said these very words about Lucy's hip bone after he discovered it. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. Yeah, I know he said her, but that's before he knew she was a he. I know, very confusing. Anyway, if Lucifer's hips flared out like a chimp's, making it so that it couldn't walk upright, what happened to change the hips so that what you see in museums and publications look like human hips? Man, you guys asked the best questions, and here's the answer. Owen Lovejoy, an anthropologist, made a copy of the hip bones in plaster and then, and I quote, cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. He did what now? Like I said, you're going to love this part of the story. He cut and put them back together. Now, how did he know that's the way the hip was before Lucy died? I mean, why did he take a hip that, quote, resembled a chimpanzee's and then rearrange, literally saw, cut, and reconstruct things to make it appear like a human hip? Well, that I'll leave for you to contemplate. But at least we now know that the foundation of the artist rendering of AL2881, nicknamed Lucy, aka Lucifer the ape-like beast, is completely unfounded because there's no real evidence that he, she, it, whatever the preferred pronoun might be, walked upright. Probably shouldn't have said that either. Anyway, the point is this manufactured missing link, this unfounded depiction of Lucifer walking upright and smiling, this suspicious reconstruction of the hip, this incomplete bag of bones with no feet, and this embarrassing misgendering mistake pretty much demonstrate the claim that Lucy is the real deal has been, humanly speaking, debunked. Adios.
Yeah, debunk.org or get debunked. Yeah, they do excellent work. And so I encourage you, they got some, like 30 some of them, and they talked about Lucy's hip being cut. And if you want to see that, probably the easiest way to find it is on my YouTube channel, Solidify Your Faith. Go down to Lies of Evolution, and it's in there somewhere. This is from a Nova documentary with Don Johanson. This is what he was talking about.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost. Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
Well, I hope so, after you cut it apart and put it back the way you want it. So what does that tell us? Instead of changing the theory to fit the evidence, they changed the evidence to fit the theory. And I was at St. Cloud State one time next to a kiosk with the anthropology department, and I told them about that. And they said they didn't do that. And I said, sure they did. I got it on my computer. Do you want to see it? No, I don't want to see it. You know, just don't let facts get in the way of a good story. But this is what I've really enjoyed playing these at St. Cloud State. This is Genesis Apologetics on YouTube, and you go down to their created playlists, and there's a classroom section. And somebody emailed or Facebooked me and said, hey, can you opt out of evolution in public schools like you can opt out of sex education? And I said, I don't know, but your kids could ask questions like this.
We know our early ancestors, like Lucy, were walking upright because we found her footprints in Tanzania.
Wait a minute, weren't those footprints like 1,000 miles away from where Lucy was found?
Yeah, give or take.
Well, how big were her foot fossils?
Well, they didn't actually find Lucy's hands or feet.
Well, so how big were the actual Tanzania footprints?
About 10 inches long.
That's how big my feet are, and I only wear a 9.5.
So wait a minute, so they never found her feet, but Lucy, a 3.5-foot tall person, made 10-inch long footprints 1,000 miles away? If you ask me, it sounds like the story that Lucy walked upright is lacking some evidence based on the Tanzania footprints.
And they must have probably 20 or 30 of these, about a minute, and it's well worth it.
Christianity is a blind faith, but belief in evolution relies solely on science.
Hey, that's right. Living things can't come from non-living things.
Huh?
Well, like the professor said, right? So evolutionists have to believe that non-living matter became alive at some point in time down the line. Professor, can you give me a non-disputed scientific fact of how that could happen?
There are several theories, but science is still trying to figure that one out.
Right. So the law of biogenesis states that life can only come from life. It is scientifically impossible for life to generate by itself. But that is exactly what you believe, sir. And that is the definition of blind faith.
Yeah, I think we got to start asking questions, make them squirm.
It says here, our traits are passed down according to our genetic code, according to a very specific set of rules first observed by Gregor Mendel. And in my opinion, that's a huge blow to evolution.
Okay, I can't wait to hear this.
Okay, so first, life has never been observed to come from non-life. Ever. Second, to date, there is no known observable process by which new genetic information can be added to the genetic code of any organism. Without these, evolution's dead in the water. I mean, these aren't just side issues, these are imperative to evolutionary theory. If you can't get the evolutionary car started, you can't move it down the street. So, Professor, is there any new evidence you have to answer these 2 points?
Let me check the science journals.
Good questions, well-placed questions can stop them in their tracks, and it's really fun playing those at St. Cloud State. I wish they were a little louder, but yeah, those are fun. It was hard to cut it down to just 3. They probably 30 of them. And GenesisApologetics.com, they have a movie. You could have a movie night with your kids or whatever, make some popcorn, and I'll just show a little bit of the trailer.
I was fascinated with how we came into existence. So I studied both sides of the argument, and it all changed for me one day.
It is my hope that you would take these theories and continue to help us prove just how evolution happens.
Sir, I have a question.
Don't you think that's an unusually long time without any transitions between apes to humans? It looks like there's a lot of speculation, even exaggeration.
The Earth is billions of years old, which allows evolution to take place.
I don't mean any disrespect, but I believe that the theory of evolution is the most fluent, ever-changing theory on the face of the planet.
Yeah, she's right about that. It's ever-changing. Very plastic. Yeah, GenesisImpact.com or .org. Another one, this is CMI, that's the creation.com, guys, Creation Ministries International. You go into YouTube and it's CMI videos, and then you go down to Creation Facts, and then you'll see stuff like on the flood. I'll skip that one for sake of time. But this one, I think this one really hits the nail on the head. Why aren't they giving creationists their fair shake in the classroom? Why can't people talk about it? And I think this explains it pretty well.
One of the basic tenets of science is that open-mindedness is critically important, and the evidence should be followed wherever it may lead. But some scientists say that we should not always be so open-minded, and that some conclusions should not be allowed, even if demanded by all the evidence. They say that no matter how much evidence there is for ingenious design in life, in the structure of the universe, or in libraries full of encoded information in genomes, they must not even consider the possibility that God might have had anything to do with the creation of such wonders. One scientist said, "Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic." But this simply reveals a philosophical bias against God. Many highly qualified scientists believe the Bible's account of creation provides a much better explanation for the existence and operation of the universe.
To find out more from Creation Ministries International, visit our website, creation.com.
Yeah, there's probably 60 to 80 of those on that website. You can get really up to speed just in a minute. They're just really good at that. And then this is scienceuprising.com. Scienceuprising.com. These are intelligent design people. So they'll point to a designer. They don't go as far as saying it was Jesus or God. And I play this at St. Cloud State. So just imagine you're walking by class and you're walking by the speaker and you hear this.
Modified monkeys? Is that what we are? Or is it just a mask some scientists want us to wear?
The origin of life community has not been honest.
Materialists understand that materialism cannot explain the mind.
Who am I?
Rather than abandoning materialism, they abandon the mind.
Our planet has water and carbon, both necessary for life. So the Earth is exceedingly rare.
You get many people deceived, thinking that life has been all but made.
We come the way. Out of spin, show you the way.
There exists a code so complex and advanced that it defies the probability of chance.
When we see information in software and we trace that information back to its source, we always come to a mind that's part of what we know from our observation of the world around us, that information always arises from an intelligent source.
Yeah, that was Science Uprising, and several years ago, this is before COVID, we had a creation club and we were meeting here on Saturdays and we were showing movies and stuff, and a homeless guy came in and saw this stuff. You can show that stuff here? It's like, yeah, free speech. And got to be pretty good friends with him during COVID. But a guy came in and he said, what you doing here? And I said, we're showing creation clips. And he goes, I'll be back. So then he came back with his friend, and so I showed him this clip. This is the origin of life. Plus, I showed him the origin of DNA, and it was a really interesting response.
The life we have on Earth must have spontaneously generated itself.
Scientists have reason to think that the first living cells on Earth came about through a natural process called chemical evolution. First living cell chemical evolution.
Spontaneously generated itself.
Did life really spontaneously generate itself from chemicals? Has science shown this? We tracked down James Tour, one of the world's leading experts in synthetic organic chemistry, to find out.
All of these little pictures of molecules coming together to form the first cell are fallacious, are ridiculous. The origin of life community has not been honest. They will write in their very papers, they will see some small phenomena and extrapolate what this means in the context of origin of life. And then they will work with the press, and the press will extrapolate it all the more. And you get many, many people deceived, thinking that life has been all but made. All of this is a lie.
Scientist Craig Venter creates life for the first time in a laboratory.
We're here today to announce the first synthetic cell.
We haven't created life, nowhere close. What they did is they took a cell. They took the genome out of that cell. They manufactured a genome that's similar to it, and they put it in. That is akin to taking an engine out of a Ford and putting it into a Buick and then saying, look, I created automobiles. No, you just took one piece, and it's not even the engine, it's just the computer control box you took out of one car and you put it in another car. That's what it was like. But the design of the computer control box you got from other cells.
Other scientists say they've been able to create protocells in the lab that are the stepping stones to the first life.
I can mix some chemicals together in a test tube in my lab, and these chemicals will start to self-associate to form larger and larger structures. The protocell moves. As a metabolism, it could use energy and moves around.
Protocells are a bunch of nonsense. That is like a proto-turkey. I take 20 pounds of sliced turkey meat from a delicatessen. I throw that into a pot. I add some turkey broth. I warm that up, and I throw in some feathers, and I say, that's a proto-turkey. Yeah, there's no order to it, but you know, if you wait long enough, a turkey will come gobbling out. That sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? That's precisely what origin of life researchers have done when they make a protocell.
Wait a second. Haven't we been taught with hundreds of millions of years anything is possible?
Time is actually the enemy. You let these chemicals that have been made sit around. They show the degradation in a period of weeks. Weeks is the twinkling of an eye when it comes to prebiotic timescales. The chemicals decompose. So to think that the molecules could be made and sit there waiting for other molecules to come in, it doesn't happen. Organic chemistry doesn't work that way.
Well, if life didn't spontaneously generate on Earth, what about scientists who believe that life must have come here from outer space?
Whether you want to have it originate from Earth or from some other planet, you have to have the origin of life. You have to have the origin of that first cell. How does that happen? We have no idea.
So with all the advances in scientific research and the study of life, why can't we figure this out?
With all of origin of life research going on, the problem is becoming harder all the time, not easier. And the reason it's become harder is because we understand more about the complexity of a cell.
To help explain the complexity of living cells, we turn to molecular biologist Douglas Axe.
To get an idea of the complexity of a living cell, think of a factory with thousands of pieces of machinery all working together to do some coordinated task. A cell is actually far more complicated than that factory because factories don't maintain themselves. People have to maintain factories, and factories certainly don't make new factories. Whereas with a living cell, all the parts that wear out are automatically remanufactured within the cell. Not only that, the cell is manufacturing a new cell as well. Human-made factories don't even come close.
For a living cell to exist and perform such complex tasks, it takes some very detailed instructions, which are chemically encoded in our DNA.
If you have a string of nucleic acids like DNA or RNA has, you have to have a precise sequence because that translates to what proteins are needed to build the organism. That's called the information code.
But where did all that information, these detailed instructions, come from to build the first cell?
We don't have a tool to assess that within chemistry.
Laboratory chemistry may not, but Stephen Meyer is convinced origin science does have the tools.
Is there anything we know of that does have the causal power, the ability to generate new information, and therefore could explain the origin of the first cell? And I think there is, and that's the idea of intelligent design.
Intelligent design is defined as the theory that certain features of the natural world are best explained by an intelligent cause, not an undirected process.
Because what we know from our experience is that intelligent agents can produce information, and indeed do produce information in a digital or typographic form, the form of information that we find in the DNA molecule, functional digital information. Whenever we see information and we trace it back to its source, whether we find it in a section of software code or a paragraph in a book or in a hieroglyphic inscription, we always find that a mind played a role in generating that information.
Don't be fooled by the hype. Materialists are further from explaining the origin of life than ever before, yet they still refuse to consider the only observable source known to create information code, an intelligent designing mind. We are not materialists. We see the human soul. We experience love. We live with purpose. We fight for justice. We are the quiet majority, and we will be quiet no longer.
So I showed that, the origin of life, and I showed the origin of DNA, and the guy and his friend, they got up. His friend did not look happy. And as they're walking out, the first guy said, you know, if this is true, that raises some interesting questions. And I said, yeah, it most certainly does. And so, yeah, that's scienceuprising.com. And so those are things that you can go to their websites. And also on YouTube, there's a lot of really good creation clubs all around the country, and they've got YouTube channels. The top one, that's our local one, Twin Cities Creation Science Association. And then Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, I spoke there last fall. Denver Creation Society, Midwest Creation Fellowship Santee, I've spoken on them. That's just an online one, but you can see the old talks. And then Northwest Creation Network, and they just had a speaker talking about the Scablands. Amazing. Yeah, just recently, if you can go onto their YouTube or their website and to see that. I mean, there's a water, they call it Dry Falls, or this, what is it, something, forget it, but this huge waterfall. And it's like Niagara Falls, only like 5 times bigger, but there's no water going over it. So there was huge water flow at one time, the Scablands in Carpenter or something like that. But anyhow, yeah, and then they also, CMI, creation.com, they've gone there, and they've also got webinars every month. And so there's a way that you don't have to leave your house to get informed. And you can hear people all over the world talking about creation. And so we can get very well equipped. But if you want to walk away from the the internet for a while and see things in real life, go to visitcreation.org, and that's got all the creation places around the country, actually around the world. And if I was to pick one, go down to Creation Evidence Museum down in Glen Rose, Texas. This is Carl Baugh Museum. This is the museum that changed my life. I got out of there and I was upset. It's like, why do I got to go to Texas to see that there was a dinosaur foot that stepped on a human footprint? And they've got that stuff in the museum. And there's creation ministries that say, don't talk about this. And so what I'm telling you is this is controversial. That just means there's strong opinions on each side, and somewhere there's the truth, and study it out yourself. Listen to, and I interviewed Carl Baugh at the Grace Conference, and he said, yeah, when I found a human footprint next to a dinosaur footprint, I couldn't sleep for 4 nights. It just rocked his world. He was an old earther. And yeah, and so that's a really good one. And I could go on and on about that one. And then while you're down there, go to the one in Dallas. This is ICR's Discovery Center. This is where Randy Galuza is there, and they've got scientists. They're doing really good studies. And we stopped there once before this was built, and we stopped there, and I thought they gave tours, and they didn't give tours. And we showed up, but Brian Thomas, he showed us around. He showed us the plaques and the fossils and the quotes, and it was just such a tremendous blessing. And so, yeah, they've got some really good scientists, friendly scientists. Yeah, I don't know what it is about that place, but they are super nice, but they're super powerful when they talk. Because Brian Thomas, now I think he's got a degree about soft tissues and dinosaurs. And then there's the Ark Encounter. Anybody ever been to that? Okay, yeah, I've yet to get there, but I have been to the Creation Museum. Both of them are Answers in Genesis ones. And then we got this one I talked about at the very beginning. This is down at Living Water Bible Camp. They've got a real small creation museum, but it's really they go through the 7 days of creation. This is just the gathering room. Off to the left, you're going to go through the 7 days, and it's really powerful. He brings public school kids through there. And he starts out saying, we're living on this huge marble, and he gives the dimensions of the earth going through space at such and such a miles an hour. He goes, how do you explain that? And then if a kid brings up God, then he can show them the rest of the days of creation. So I would encourage people to go to that creation, this Living Water Bible Camp, lwbc.org. And if you got that first part of May open, I would encourage you to go down there and to see the place and to talk to Randy Galuza. He's one of the shining stars in the creation movement. I think he's the one who's going to bring us out of the dark ages, the blind chance and random collisions of atoms, based on what those guys are doing. And then ICR, they've got this Acts and Facts. Going to ICR.org, you can sign up for Acts and Facts. It's a newsletter that comes out for free. Excellent information on there. And Creation.com, this is a magazine. It's on some of your desks. And that comes out 4 times a year. And I use this as a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. Give it to nieces, nephews, whatever. So then, because they have to get equipped to this evolutionary dogma that permeates society. And then, whoops, where did that come from? And then also there's this Journal of Creation. Those are scientists at creation.com. Those are the CMI guys. And this isn't in print anymore, but you can see it online. Just like the Answers Journal, Answers in Genesis has a similar thing. And then creationresearch.org. That's from Creation Research Society Quarterly. Those are the ones that have the dinosaur tissue. And when you make a donation there, or you support these ministries, basically you're saying, this is where I stand. I stand with the creationists with my money, instead of giving it off to Hollywood or Starbucks or something. Let the world support those. We need the Christians to support the creationists. And then this was descentfromdarwin.org. I'm not sure if I showed you this video last week, but these are PhD scientists. There's over 1,000 PhD scientists that doubt Darwinian evolution. And they sign off on this. We are skeptical of the claims of the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwinian theory should be encouraged. So there's over 1,000 PhD scientists that say, I doubt Darwin. And my question, I was able to meet Senator Putnam last month, and I was able to walk with him to his car and talk with him about the freedom of speech and science. And I emailed him this link, and I asked him, should this fact be taught to the kids in science class? I mean, there's over 1,000 PhD scientists who doubt Darwin. Should that fact be taught? Who thinks so? Who thinks that fact should not be taught? Should we hide that fact? Okay, all right. And so here we go. This is what they're saying. This is. I misunderstood. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, but I think everybody should have all the information to come to their own conclusion. So when they're teaching evolution in school, they should show this clip and say, hey, there's 1,000 people, PhDs, that don't believe it.
Skeptical.
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 Skeptical
of claims
for the ability
of random mutations
and natural selection
to account for
the complexity.
The complexity.
To account for the complexity of life.
Careful examination.
Examination
of the evidence
for Darwinian theory
should be encouraged.
Absolutely. It should be encouraged. And then this one, expelled, no intelligence allowed. And Ben Stein does a great job with this. I'd like to show this at St. Cloud State someday, but you can get it online. I think you can see it on YouTube. It's on there, expelled, no intelligence allowed, and he ties it all up.
Moving through history in an unguided and undesigned way, the theory of evolution.
Excuse me?
Yes. Ben.
How did life begin in the first place?
Mr. Stein, you have the same question every time.
Well, you never answer it, sir.
It develops, you know, we've been through this so many times. You have me
Could
so...
there have been an intelligent designer?
So what are you here for?
I made a movie.
Join Ben Stein in this year's most controversial documentary film.
If they value their careers, they should keep quiet about their intelligent design views.
I was viewed as an intellectual terrorist.
I have never been treated like this in my 30 years in academia.
I lost my job.
It's a funny thing that questions that aren't properly answered don't go away.
How did we get from an inorganic world to the world of the cell?
It might have started off on the backs of crystals.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. So intelligent designers believe that God is the designer.
God is about as unlikely as fairies, angels, hobgoblins, etc.
Science makes no use of the hypothesis of God.
I mean, it's essentially official policy of the National Academy of Science that religion and science will not be related.
There are people out there who want to keep science in a little box where it can't possibly touch a higher power, cannot possibly touch God.
Must be some movie.
Expelled. No intelligence allowed.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, I would encourage that one. And well, let's wrap this up pretty quick. You know, there's not many things I agree with at St. Cloud State, but this is a banner that they got up there. It's time to be bold. And I agree. It's time to be bold. We got to start asking the evolutionists, how did life begin? Where did matter come from? And the boldest thing, well, Bob Enyart's done a lot of bold things, but he hasn't done this. Let's go into Creation Today Ministries on YouTube, and then go down to their popular ones and search, and then hit Eric Hovind blasphemes an atheist monument. So this is the very first atheist monument on government property. It's kind of like a bench there. And so what does Eric do? And keep in mind, he's surrounded by atheists. And this is Eric.
Are you photobombing me?
I'd like to thank the tolerance of the American atheists for providing a platform to proclaim the truth that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Thank you very much for being tolerant of other religions. Thank you so much for providing a platform to preach the truth.
And so, yeah, their tolerance didn't last very long, less than a minute. So you can watch the rest of that. But we got those two views of histories. One's based on God, and the other one's based on blind chance. But why does this matter? Well, it impacts the policies that they're making. You know, with those climate change things, that could take away our cheap energy and consistent energy, because they think such a fragile environment. Where I think God made it it's robust. If it gets hotter, it's going to get more evaporation, more clouds, cool it down. And it's going to impact tomorrow. You know, who are you? I mean, there's people out there that don't believe in Jesus. They don't believe in God. They believe in science, is what I meet them all the time. They believe in science. Well, if you don't believe in God, what chance do you have of putting your faith in God's Son? And that's why we do what we do, so that we can point people to the Creator and then point people to Jesus' Son, so they can put their faith in what Jesus did for them on the cross and go to heaven. And so basically that's what we're trying to do. You know, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And we want people to acknowledge that there's a Creator. And I just said this the other day at the VOTEC. They asked me, what do I believe? I said, I believe God created, there's a Creator that made everything, and He revealed Himself in a book. And His Son died for our sins so that to pay the penalties so we can go to heaven. And that's kind of what this is all about. Let's see, coming up this Sunday, we've got another Sunday dinner. If you guys want to come out, go to northlandchurch.com. It's Northland Bible Baptist Church, another Sunday dinner. You were there, weren't you, Michael? Were you at one of them? Well, was it thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, yeah. Well, we're doing it again. This is also for Grace Campus Fellowship, and everybody's welcome. We do our service at 10:30. And with that, I'll just leave you the dates of the next creation events. And then my YouTube channel and Rumble channels are on the bottom, because there's some things I can't talk about on YouTube, so I put them on Rumble. And with that, we ran 4 minutes over. Sorry about that. Mary, do you want to hit the lights? And we got Q&A.